Welcome to the major events of Afghanistan on Saturday, August 2nd. A new report from the Organization for Operations shows that the Khorasan branch of ISIS is still considered the most serious global threat. This group has expanded its activities in Afghanistan and the region by recruiting 2,000 fighters and training children in religious schools. The report says that this group uses messaging apps to encourage extremism. More details in this report.
The United Nations Security Council Sanctions Monitoring and Analytical Support Team has reported an increase in the activities of the Islamic State Khorasan Province, ISIS-K, in Afghanistan, the region, and around the world, expressing concern that this group is the most serious threat to the world. In its 36th report, which was presented to the Security Council on Wednesday, July 30th, this team added that the Taliban continues to provide a favorable environment for terrorist groups in Afghanistan, including Al-Qaeda and its allies, which, according to the team, poses a serious threat to the security of Central Asia and other countries. The United Nations Security Council's Analytical Support and Sanctions Monitoring Team, in this 27-page report published on the United Nations website, also stated that concerns about the detention of foreign terrorists have created an uncertain future for this group. Because, according to this report, their return to Central Asia and Afghanistan could disrupt the security of the region. The report states that although the Taliban government has weakened the activities of this group, it is said that since 2024, ISIS, with 2,000 fighters, has continued to recruit militants from dissident groups both inside and outside Afghanistan, including from the Russian Caucasus in Central Asia. According to the report by the UN Security Council's Sanctions Monitoring and Analytical Support Team, the Khorasan branch of ISIS, which is based in Afghanistan, uses secure messaging apps and social media to encourage people toward extremism and is currently considered the biggest threat to the United States and Europe. The report adds that the Khorasan branch of ISIS is trying to expand its activities in Afghanistan's neighboring countries and around the world. The report states that the Khorasan branch of ISIS is training children in religious schools in northern and northeastern Afghanistan and near the border with Pakistan, and has also launched a suicide training program for children under the age of 14. Some Afghans, especially those who have bitter memories of ISIS and Khorasan operations, find such reports concerning. Asadullah, a resident of Mazar-e-Sharif in Balkh province, whose 45-year-old brother Nematullah was killed in an ISIS attack on a mosque on the 1st of Sor 1401, says, "Such reports are very worrying.
It's easy to get worried. It makes you anxious. What else can we do? Where should we go? No matter which way you turn, you're stuck. We just have to endure it. I lost my brother. I call out for Christ. He was martyred on that date, even while praying. ISIS claimed responsibility, saying they did this too. We have experienced it. We saw what happened. Now, Christians can't even go to pray without fear. They're afraid. Worried that there might be a suicide attack at any moment. Always on edge. There was also the attack for which ISIS Khorasan claimed responsibility, where 31 people were killed and 90 were injured. One of the residents of Nangarhar province, who did not want their name mentioned in the report due to the sensitivity of the issue, also said,
"Honestly, these kinds of reports are really worrying, because we have very bad memories of ISIS. In Nangarhar, they destroyed many homes. They martyred many innocent people and even bombed civilians during the previous government. Such reports create fear and anxiety in the hearts of the Afghan people because all of Afghanistan has witnessed their attacks. We have witnessed it ourselves."
According to the report by the UN Security Council's Sanctions Monitoring and Analytical Support Team, ISIS fighters have been distributed across the northern and northeastern provinces of Afghanistan. This team has also expressed concern that some extremist fighters might be transferred from Syria to Afghanistan and then launch operations from Central Asia against countries in the region. The report states that the Taliban's actions have weakened the capabilities of ISIS Khorasan. However, alongside the discontent and unrest within the Taliban government, this group has also benefited from foreign fighters in Central Asia. The UN Security Council Sanctions Monitoring and Analytical Support Team has stated that the Taliban have incorporated fighters from the Ansarullah Group of Tajikistan, the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, and Katibat Imam al-Bukhari into their police and military units. Although spokespeople for the Taliban government did not respond to the report by the UN Security Council's Sanctions Monitoring and Analytical Support Team, they had previously emphasized in interviews that they have severely suppressed the Khorasan branch of ISIS. They also claimed to have driven out other terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, and stated that they would not allow anyone to use Afghan soil against other countries. It is worth noting that even after the Taliban regained power in Afghanistan, the Khorasan branch of ISIS has carried out deadly attacks in various provinces, including Kabul, targeting and killing some government officials and pro-Taliban religious scholars, among them Khalil Rahman Haqqani, the acting Minister of Refugees and Repatriation for the Taliban.
On the eve of the 4th anniversary of the Taliban's rule, a coalition of Afghan civil organizations announced that a People's Court for Afghan women will be held from October 8th to 10th in Madrid. The aim of this court is to prevent the normalization of the Taliban's repressive policies and to hear the testimonies of Afghan women and girls who have faced systematic oppression. More details in this report.
On the eve of the 4th anniversary of the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan, and amid a clear increase in restrictions on Afghan women and girls by the Taliban government, the Afghan Civil Society Organizations Coalition has announced the launch of a People's Tribunal for Afghan women. This tribunal is being held in collaboration with human rights organizations, Rawadari, the Afghanistan Human Rights and Democracy Organization, the Policy and Development Studies Organization, and human rights defenders. The coalition of these organizations announced in a statement on Thursday, July 31st, that the People's Tribunal for Afghan Women was held from October 8th to 10th in Madrid, Spain, and it will hear testimonies from Afghan women and girls who have faced systematic repression since the Taliban's return to power in August 2021. Shahrazad Atbar, head of the human rights organization known as Rawadari, spoke on Friday, August 1st, about the purpose of holding the People's Tribunal for Afghan women.
The aim of the People's Tribunal for Afghan women is to prevent the normalization of the Taliban's repressive policies and to provide an opportunity for Afghan women to share their experiences and their situation with the world in the presence of a People's Court and an international panel of judges. And we hope that we can use the court's verdict to mobilize political pressure on the Taliban, and that the documents collected during this process will be used by the International Tribunal to prosecute the Taliban for their actions against Afghan women.
Shahrazad Atbar, although she says this court is an informal mechanism and its verdicts are not binding. But she adds that after the 2-day, 3-month court session on the 3rd day, the judges had their initial telegrams. And in December, the judges will rule on the indictment presented by 4 Afghan prosecutors against the Taliban. This court is being held under the framework of the Permanent People's Tribunal, an international organization based in Rome, Italy, which has so far held more than 50 sessions on human rights violations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity around the world. The coalition statement from Afghan civil society organizations also mentions that the witnesses in this court will include survivors, legal experts, and human rights activists from around the world. And the court sessions will be broadcast live. Richard Bennett, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, has welcomed this Afghan-focused People's Tribunal. In a note on his former Twitter page, he stated that justice can take many forms and that a comprehensive, inclusive, and survivor-centered approach should be adopted. A number of Afghan women and girls have welcomed this move, calling it an important and unprecedented step in defending the rights of Afghan women. Bahar, a resident of Kabul, has this to say about it.
As an Afghan girl, I deeply support the establishment of a People's Tribunal for the women of Afghanistan. In my opinion, it is a very important, unprecedented, and necessary step to raise the voices of Afghan women who have faced oppression and injustice over the past few years. Because we don't want the world to just sympathize with us. We want action. We want justice.
A resident of Khuzestan province, who did not want their name mentioned in the report due to the sensitivity of the issue, also adds,
I consider this a very good step, and it's good news for Afghan women, so that their voices are heard and their problems are listened to. I hope the world puts pressure on the Taliban and compels them to grant women their rights.
We tried to get Hamdullah Fitrat, the acting spokesperson for the Taliban government, to comment on this action by civil society organizations. But he did not respond to the questions by the time the report was published.
After the mass migration of Afghan cultural figures to Europe, the United States, and Canada, Afghan cultural activities in these countries have seen remarkable growth. From holding poetry gatherings in Germany to literary meetings in Canadian cafes. The cultural scene of Afghans abroad has taken on a fresh, new flavor. More details in this report.
Afghan cultural figures among the migrants are torchbearers. After the Taliban regained power in Afghanistan, although cultural activities in the country have declined, with the migration of a large number of cultural figures to Europe, the US, and Canada, there is now talk of the expansion and vibrancy of Afghan cultural activities in those places. Some cultural figures who have already been living in these countries say that this change is noticeable both in terms of quantity and quality. Dr. Sher Wali Sher was the head of the Afghan Cultural Association in Germany.
With their arrival, not only did our cultural activities become faster and more widespread, but overall, across Europe, we are witnessing the expansion of cultural activities, and there is much more work being done.
Recently, this very association organized a large poetry contest called Mashera, in which dozens of poets, including those who have recently migrated, participated from various European countries. Additionally, from other European countries as well, reports of cultural gatherings and artistic programs are occasionally published. In several states in the U.S. as well, there is talk of the expansion and improvement of cultural activities. Ms. Nushiba Ashna is here, the director of literary programs at Radio Ashna, Voice of America, who lives in this country, said,
"Here in America, Afghans have held literary gatherings in the past, and these programs are still being organized. The suggestion is that newly published works and books are presented. But with the arrival of writers, poets, and journalists from Afghanistan and their participation in these gatherings, the literary atmosphere has changed significantly. This change has had positive effects both in terms of quantity and quality."
These days, news about an upcoming art event called Afghan Gathering has been circulating on social media in America. It seems that this event is being organized to mark the 28th of Assad, Afghanistan's Independence Day. In America's neighboring country, Canada, Afghan cultural figures have not remained silent either. Zafia Milad, an Afghan poet and writer living in his country, said,
"This migration has brought a fresh spirit to Afghan literary gatherings in Canadian cafes, allowing them to breathe new life again. Because here, a poet can cry out about love, speak of homeland, share their longing, and tell the truth. And here, pens are not broken for their thoughts, and words do not die under the blade of censorship."
It is worth noting that after the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan, a number of Afghan cultural figures and artists also migrated to neighboring countries. However, due to a lack of sufficient resources and various pressures from host countries on refugees, it has not been possible to collectively provide extensive and vibrant cultural and artistic activities for them. Nevertheless, in some cases, activities have been carried out individually.
Anosh Dastgir, the former head coach of Afghanistan's national football team, has officially been appointed as the new head coach of Germany's U18 and U19 national teams. This appointment reflects the high level of trust the German Football Federation has in the technical expertise of this 35-year-old coach, who was born in Kabul and also has experience leading Al Merseyside in the German Premier League. He explains more about this in a private interview.
Well, recently I signed a 2-year contract with the Dutch Football Federation. The first year is with the under-18 national team, and the second year is with the under-19 team, which will play in the preliminary qualifiers for the European Championship. And I also want to mention that the Dutch under-19 team became European champions this year. This, I want to say, is a great honor for our people, and we all congratulate them on this achievement. Well, before I signed the 2-year contract, I was here at Al Merseyside Club, and I still had a 2-year contract with Al Merseyside. The plan was for me to become the head coach of Al Merseyside next year. But after this opportunity came up, I did my absolute best to go to the Dutch Football Federation and become an employee there.
What challenges and difficulties do you think lie ahead? What plans and programs do you have that you want to implement, which previous coaches of the Dutch youth teams haven't managed to put into practice?
Well, to start with, I was the head coach of Afghanistan's national team for 4 years. From 2018 to 2022. And of course, the problems I faced with Afghanistan's national team were a bit more severe than the ones here. Travel challenges, budget challenges. In every aspect, if I may say, the facilities here are definitely better and more abundant. The plan is that in the first year, the age group is under 18. All these players play in the U23 teams of the Premier League, and next year they will play in the Senior Premier League. So, the plan is to go and select the players up close ourselves. There are players who play for Ajax, the PSV team. We have one player at Bayern Munich and one player at Barcelona. So, the plan is to go see the players up close, talk to them, and gather all of them during the national team days so we can have some matches. The matches are already set. The matches for the whole year ahead are already determined. In Europe, our first match is actually with America. Next month, in September, the second match will be in Spain against Switzerland. And if I'm not mistaken, Denmark. So, all these plans are ready for the first year. Next year, when the team turns under 19, there will be a draw. With the draw, it will be determined which countries we'll face in the qualifying matches.
Can you talk a bit about those days, about whether you left the Afghanistan national team yourself or were let go in some way, what exactly happened?
In 2018, I became the head coach of the Afghanistan national team. Barely 3 months into my coaching, the federation, the leadership of the federation, was suspended. A year later, a year after I became coach, COVID hit, and for a year and a half, all national matches were stopped. During that time, the national team's kit sponsor also pulled out. The national team's budget was also cut. There were changes in the leadership of the federation. After all those challenges were resolved and COVID was over, we wanted to resume our matches, despite all the challenges that still existed. And then, after these 3 years, if we look at the changes that happened in the Afghan government in the last year. Honestly, in these 4 years, I couldn't really do my job well for even 6 months. Because there were all sorts of challenges and so many problems that, honestly, if I started telling you about them now, it would probably take us a few days just to finish the story.
Yes, and honestly, some of those problems still exist and are ongoing. Of course, now it's in a different form. Another question, do you have an academic education in football at the university level, or is it mainly those coaching courses that most of the top coaches in the world have taken? I mean, have you completed those as well?
No. I started at the Johan Cruyff Academy in 2013, right after I graduated that year. Well, you probably already know about Johan Cruyff. He has an academy where they teach football as a major. I graduated from there. I studied there for 2 years. After that, I completed the coaching courses up to the UEFA Pro level. And of course, you can never really say you're done learning football. You always have to stay up to date. There are annual courses that we have to take. It's not absolutely necessary. I want to go myself.
End of the news.